I cannot lie to you, this video is not going to be exciting, but it should be educational, and I'll try to make it as interesting as I can while I make it educational. Why is it going to be educational? Well, because I am here to show you how to install the eXtremeRate Hope Kit to your Xbox Series X and Series S default controller. This Hope Kit will give you 4 back buttons on the back of the standard default controller. You can see my video just giving a short review about this modification using the link in the description. This is just a high level installation video showing you how to do it. If you have a good idea of what you're doing inside of a controller, then this video should give you everything that you need to know. But if you are new to controller modifications, there is also a link to a slightly more in-depth eXtremeRate video in the description that you can go to get the full details on how to install this kit. Now, before we get into it, if you do want to like and subscribe, then please do. I'm not going to hold that against you. But for now, let's get on with this installation of the eXtremeRate Hope Kit. Let's start out by looking at the parts that come with this kit. You do need to have a fair bit of ability when it comes to taking a controller apart and doing some electronic work. You do need to do soldering. So if you haven't done soldering before and don't have the equipment, you won't be able to do this until you get that equipment, or if you can find someone that can do it for you. If you've never soldered before, I recommend not trying out on this Hope Kit. This isn't just a simple plug and play. You actually have to put some work into this. Now, first in the kit, we can see we've got the 4 buttons. We've got a little slider switch there that switches you into the profile mapping mode, or the remapping mode rather. And we have the 2 bits at the top that actually hold the buttons in place in the back of the controller. There's a close up there on the bit that holds onto the buttons. You can see it says K3 and K4, so you can't get it wrong. You know exactly which buttons go where on this kit. It's very well laid out for you. Next, we have the back plate that comes with the Hope Kit. This is the bulk of the Hope Kit itself. This replaces the default back of your default controller. And also you can see the 2 grips that I chose to get with this controller. I went for the white ones because I like them. Now, eXtremeRate are very good at giving you all of the tools that you need to apply their equipment, or to apply their kits and their modifications. You get all the screwdrivers you need. You get the little orange spudger on the right hand side that allows you to take the controller apart. You get all the screws that you need. You get spares. You get everything that you need with these kits to do the job. Here we can see we've got a ribbon cable used for testing the soldering after you're done. We've also got 2 small circuit boards. That smaller one on the left hand side, or the thinner one on the left hand side, goes onto a small circuit board in the default controller, and the larger circuit board attaches to the main circuit board of the controller. There's the main circuit board. We've got 2 little connections up at the top there that are used for hooking up the ribbon cables, which we will come to in a moment. There's 1 smaller ribbon cable right there. And then here we've got the circuit board that actually connects into the back plate of the controller, which has got the buttons attached to it. And that cable hanging off the left there, that's the other ribbon cable that connects into the larger ribbon cable slot on the main circuit board of the Hope Kit. Next, we have a solder tester card, or a tester board. 4 different types of screws. We're not going to use the larger screw there. That is just a replacement screw for holding the controller together, but you will need the 3 other screws on the right hand side. Now let's take a look at the actual installation process. Before we even start taking apart the Project Red default controller, we're going to put together the Hope Kit, or at least the back part of it anyway, the bits that we can do, the hardware part of it that doesn't go inside the controller. So here is the back plate, and here is the little switch that we just put into place, and that's going to allow us to activate and deactivate the mapping mode for the controller. As you can see there, it just slides from left to right, nice and easy, and that just sits there. Now the next thing we're going to do is get the little circuit board that has the buttons attached to it. Now, as you can see here, there is actually a little switch on the circuit board, so we just need to put that into place and make sure that that switch is aligned to the same position that the switch in the back plate is. So it just presses in nicely and it just sits there. We can see there are 3 holes that we need to put the screws in. So with the screws now in place, if we turn the controller over, or the back of the controller over, at least the back plate, we can see that if we flick the switch from side to side, that is it, I think, in the off position, and that's in the on position. We'll find out when we actually hook it all up, but that's the switch there, moving perfectly well. Now on the left hand side here, we can see the text K3 and K4. On the other side, we've got K1 and K2, but here we have the button unit which has K3 and K4 in it. So what we do is we simply take the 2 buttons on the left hand side The top one wraps over the top of this little button holding unit. I don't know what you call it. We're going to call it a button holding unit. We put the first one into place, and then we will grab the second button, and then we will just fold that over in exactly the same way and clip that into place on that little button holder thingy. That's officially what I'm calling it now, the button holder thingy. You then simply just turn it over, slot it into place with the buttons going through the holes in the back plate. And if I just hold that in place and turn it over, you can see that that's the buttons there poking through nicely, as you'd expect. And now all we need to do is screw this button holder thingy into place. We can see we've got 3 screw holes, one at the top, one at the bottom right, and then one on the left hand side. Once we've screwed that into place, it will be there nice and steady, ready for use. Now we need to do the same on the right hand side. You can see I've done this already, and you know that's the back pretty much done. That's it. Ready. That is it ready. Oh no, wait a minute. We've got to put the actual buttons onto the buttons, of course. Now all the buttons have letters and numbers on. They all say K1 to K4. K4 just simply slots there onto the left hand grip at the bottom. K3 does exactly the same on the left hand side and goes into the top. And as we turn the controller over to the other side on the right hand grip, K1 goes on the top and K2 goes on the bottom. And that is it. That is the back plate with all 4 buttons firmly fixed into place. And as we press them, we can just feel them clicking, so we know they're there. And this feels good. This feels all good. The switches, the buttons, press. Now we get to work on actually taking apart the controller itself. I've already taken one grip off, and I'm just going to show you how to take the second one off. You get your plastic spudger here, and you just start at the bottom. Now, some people will tell you to start at the trigger. I personally find it easier to start at the bottom and just lever that bottom corner away and start to work my way up the back of the grip. Once the back has come away a little bit enough, I just start to work around the outside just a little bit, just to make sure that it's pulled away as much as it can be. And then once that's done, I just simply get my fingers in there and just pull the grip right off, and that is how you take the grips off. Now as we take off the battery compartment, we can see here we've got 5 screws. We've got 2 behind each grip and 1 in the battery compartment, which will be hiding underneath your Microsoft warranty sticker. On this controller, I have removed that sticker so you can see the hole. You can either take the screw out by screwing through the sticker, or you can just take the sticker off and take it out. Once you take out those 5 screws, the front just simply pulls right off. Now, with the faceplate taken off, we can then take the actual insides of the controller out, and there goes that back plate. Now, that back plate is exactly the same as the one that we've just assembled for the Hope kit, the only difference being that it doesn't have the setup for the buttons. Now, what we need to do just before we get rid of this old back plate is just take out the battery connectors. Get your spudger, just pop them up there on the sides so that they start to pull out, and then you'll just need to press in those contacts that actually go inside the battery compartment, so you can just pull that out nice and easily. And there we go, that's the battery connector removed. And then the rear plate for the default controller can be put to one side. We're not going to be using it again on this controller, that's for sure. Now, the final thing to do in order to put this back plate together for the Hope kit is to actually take that battery connector and just replace it in here, and just reverse the way we took it out of the default controller. It just simply slots in, and there you go. That is it, job done. Nice. Now, the next step, as we take a look at the controller itself, the actual mechanical and electrical parts inside. This is the exciting bit. Now we turn it over and we can see here there are 2 small connectors on 2 small cables here. We just get our spudger and we just simply pop those up very, very carefully, not to break anything. Move those cables over, and then those are out of the way, and that will allow us to work on the small circuit board in the controller that we can see right here. Now, there are 2 screws holding this into position. Before we do any work, we are going to take off the thumbsticks. They just pull right off, and we just put those to one side. We turn the controller back over, and we can see that the screws have now been taken out. I've skipped that step, but I've taken out both of those screws so that we can get started on this. Next thing to do is you can just pull this little circuit board off. It's just held in by one connector underneath, and then it will just pull off. Now, you need to be careful. You need to be very careful not to break the small cables there that the rumble motors are connected to. We've got the rumble motors in the grips and the rumble motors in the triggers. Both of those are connected. We take out this small connector, that is the 3.5mm headphone jack, and we put that to one side, making sure we take note of how it actually goes in there, so we put it back in the right way when we reconnect everything together. Now, what we've done here is actually desolder the rumble motors from that secondary circuit board and move them over to one side there, taking the rumble motors out. This makes it a little bit easier to work work with. You can do the job without doing that, but we've chosen to do that just to make it a lot easier. It does make it easier to actually connect everything else and avoid risk of breaking stuff. Now, if we take a look, we take our first little bit of circuitry that comes with the Hope remat kit, and we just screw that into place there. You can see that it has been screwed down with 2 screws, one on the left hand side and one just over in the middle above that small connector in the middle of the controller. And then if we look, we can see all the points that Mrs. Toot has done the soldering. I don't do soldering in the house. Mrs. Toot takes care of that. So those are the bits there that she has soldered onto that main circuit board. That's the large circuit board that's underneath that smaller circuit board that we took off in the first instance. Now, once we've soldered all of those on, we then put that secondary circuit board back into place and we solder on the other little bit of circuitry that comes with the Hope remat kit. That just connects at the top there, as you can see, and it doesn't screw into place. You just simply put it into position and then you solder it into position. So you don't screw it down, it just stays there when you put the solder through the holes on all of those points that have been circled in red. Now, once you have done this soldering, you then plug in this tester, and that plugs in using the supplied ribbon cables, just plugging in to that bit of the main bit of circuitry that comes with the Hope kit. You fold it over the second circuit board, as you can see there, and you just plug in this tester. Now, what this does is when you plug in the controller with the USB cable, it lights up all of the little points and shows you if you've missed any soldering. Now, as you can see here, Mrs. Toot actually missed 5 of them. There's 5 that she didn't get right. So we took the board apart, she resoldered it, plugged it back in, and there we go. We can see all of the lights are back on. So with everything now put back into place, the circuit board has been just pressed back into position. You just have to gently push it in and it just connects back into that small block that we saw when we took the controller apart, the little black bit with the pins in it. We then just take these 2 small cables and just reconnect them. The left one goes into the top connector and the right one goes into that connector just underneath it. We can see there just a small circle with a little pin right in the middle. Just put it on and then just press it down with your finger or use the edge of your spudger, whatever seems easier for you. And then once they're pushed on, we just give them a gentle tug just to make sure that they are actually on. Yes, they are. So we just wrap that little cable there into that little recess that's been made for it, and that's it tucked away nice and neatly. Now, as you can see, we have resoldered the rumble motors for the triggers and the grips back on. And now what we do is we take that main bit of circuitry from the Hope kit, we fold it back over the small circuit board, and there is a bit of tape on the back of that, and you will remove that bit of brown tape there. You push that down and secure that circuitry into place. With that in place, you just take this very tiny ribbon cable that's attached to that small bit of circuitry from the Hope kit, and we just connect that into this, let's call it a clamp. So it folds up and down with a little lever pulled up. You just push that ribbon cable into place and then push the ribbon cable down, and that's that nice and securely done. With that in place, we will now screw that smaller circuit board back into position. There we go. That's the 2 smaller screws placed in, and that circuit board is firmly fixed and that small ribbon cable is in place. Now, what I would recommend is just to double check that that's not going to pull out. It's important here that you do actually tape this small bit of circuitry to the circuit board, because what will happen is if you don't tape it down, it will flop around in the controller. That connection from that smaller ribbon cable will come loose and the Hope kit will not function properly, and you will see things that you don't want to see. For this controller, what I've done is after the install, I just simply put a bit of electrical tape on it just to hold that in place. Now we take the rear housing that we got with the Hope kit, and then we do the same thing. We make sure that little lever is pulled up on the circuitry, then we slide that ribbon cable into position, then we push that lever down, clamping it into place. We then very carefully just take the controller, we flip it over, and then we just make sure that we push it into place in the rear housing and make sure that it is exactly where it's supposed to be. There we go. That is the body of the controller back into the backing plate. Now we put the thumbsticks back on. They will only go in one way. If you look at the bottom, you can see that there's a little hole. That's like a rectangular shape. You just make sure that that slots onto the controller in the right manner. If you try to put it on and it's not going on easily, then don't force it. Just make sure you realign that thumbstick so that that hole is clearly lined up with the actual thumbstick mechanism itself. And that's it. That's the thumbsticks back on. We just make sure all the buttons still click and still press just like they're supposed to. And when we're happy with that, we take our faceplate shell and we just simply slot that back into place on top of the controller. As you put the controller back into the back plate, you need to make sure that on the left hand side there, as you can see, there are 2 metal connectors for the batteries. You've got to make sure those go through the hole in the back plate. Be very, very careful when you're putting that in so that you don't bend or break them. Once you've got that into position, you just redo the 5 screws that you took out, 2 in the grips, 1 behind the warranty sticker in the battery compartment, and that is it. That is the controller all screwed back together. The final step is then to simply take the grips that come with the Hope kit and just push them back into position, and there we go. That is the controller fully reassembled. All we do now is put the batteries in as we're supposed to, put the battery compartment on, and there you go. That is Project Red now all kitted up with the Hope kit. Thank you very much for watching this video. I do hope that it has been of use to you. Don't forget, if you do need a little bit more detail, then check the description and go over to the full detailed eXtremeRate video that you will find in the description that might just fill in the gaps. Now don't forget, you can still like and subscribe, get your notifications to make sure you don't miss any videos that I do in the future. There will be more to come, and look out for more videos in the Project Red series as I modify this default Red controller to be completely modified.